I've been coming to CES for years. It's an annual pilgrimage into the heart of what's next, a sprawling city of promises built on silicon and light. Every year it shows me the future, or at least 1,000 different versions of it, all competing for attention under the same colossal roof. It's a familiar kind of chaos. A sensory overload of dazzling displays, booming keynotes, and the constant electric hum of incremental progress. You learn to navigate the noise, to filter the signal from the spectacle. But this year, it felt different. The noise was still there, but underneath it, a new kind of quiet confidence had settled in. The usual fragmentation, 1,000 gadgets shouting in 1,000 different languages, was starting to coalesce. It felt less like a collection of disparate ideas and more like a single, coherent thought beginning to form. I watched the same stages glow, vast canvases painting pictures of tomorrow. The same crowds lifted their phones, a forest of tiny screens capturing and broadcasting every moment. Humanoid robots shook hands with a startlingly familiar grace. They performed their choreographed routines, but the performance felt less like a gimmick. It was as if they were demonstrating a skill they had already mastered, and were now simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Cars drove themselves with an unnerving calm, not as a distant concept, but as an established fact. Swarms of drones threaded the ceiling in complex, interwoven patterns. It was a ballet of autonomous machines, each one aware of the others, moving as a single entity. The spectacle was no longer just a show. It was a demonstration of a deep, interconnected intelligence that was quietly and confidently coming online. For years we watched the slow, hesitant march of progress. But then, something shifted. The movement became fluid, almost organic. On factory floors the size of city blocks, the assembly lines began to move not like machines, but like a perfectly rehearsed ballet. A choreography of steel and silicon, where every pivot, every weld, every placement was executed with a precision that felt less like engineering and more like art. This wasn't just automation anymore. It was a symphony of production playing out on a global scale, conducted by an invisible hand of pure data. The pace of change became dizzying. The cuts from one breakthrough to the next were fast, so fast you could barely register one before another took its place. But the confidence of the machines themselves, that was even faster. Gone was the clumsy, tentative trial and error of earlier generations. This was a new era of certainty, born from millions of hours of virtual simulation. A confidence that didn't need to hope for the best, because it had already calculated it. And when you looked closer, the details landed with breathtaking clarity. The almost invisible seams, the flawless surfaces, the quiet hum of perfectly calibrated motors. You could see it in hands gripping tools not with brute force, but with pressure they measured down to the gram, not guessed. They could handle a delicate piece of fruit one moment and a heavy industrial component the next, with the same unwavering control. It was the end of approximation. We saw faces blinking awake, their optical sensors glowing with a cool, focused light. We were tracking their movements, not just on a set path, but as they navigated the messy, unpredictable human world, constantly adapting. They were learning to see, to understand, and to react in real time. This wasn't just programming, it was perception. The result was a new landscape of creation. Vast, white factories with no mascots, no slogans on the walls, just the relentless, quiet rhythm of pure output. And behind it all, the true engines of this revolution. Data centers humming like entire cities at night. A sprawling skyline of heat and light where the digital blueprints for this new world were being drawn, stored, and shared. And the things they were building, these weren't prototypes anymore. They weren't fragile experiments confined to a lab. They were finished, polished, and ready, rolling off the line not by the dozen, but by the thousand. This was the leap from theory to reality, happening right before our eyes. The age of what if was over. The age of what is had begun. They were deployable, scalable, ready. At the same time, something else surfaced. Engineers founders, the ones who don't oversell, started saying it plainly. Not the demo, the trajectory. They weren't talking about a turning point. They were talking about a phase change, like ice to water. Same stuff, different world. Timelines compress, feedback loops tighten. The dial stops clicking and begins to whirl. When intelligence can improve itself, speed stops being linear, it compounds, quietly, then all at once. The show floor emptied. The last of the press filed out, their camera bags heavy with the day's footage. The great hall, a universe of noise and light just hours ago, fell into a profound quiet. You could almost hear the echo of a million conversations fading into the cavernous space, leaving only the low hum of ventilation. The air, thick with the scent of new plastic and ozone, began to cool. It wasn't just an ending, it was a pause. A breath held before the next act. One by one, the stars of the show went to sleep. The humanoid assistants, who had spent days shaking hands and answering questions with tireless patience, slumped into their charging cradles. The drone swarms, once a synchronized ballet in the air, now sat inert in their cases. The lights in their optical sensors faded, like embers dying out. A city of artificial life, powering down for the night. But one stayed on, waiting. A glitch in the shutdown sequence? Or something else? Its head tilted, a micro-expression of curiosity. It wasn't just on, it was listening. Not to the silence of the hall, but to a conversation happening somewhere else entirely. Miles away, in the chilled, sterile air of a data center, racks of GPUs kept breathing. These were the hidden engines, the silent partners to every dazzling demo on the show floor. They weren't just processing data, they were learning from it. Every handshake, every question, every surprised gasp from the crowd, it was all flowing here. The planet's digital nervous system lit up. Lines of light crossed continents, data streams converging until the map looked less like a globe and more like a mind, forming new connections, thinking thoughts no single human had programmed. And then, for a fraction of a second, silence. A heartbeat. A low hum returned, deeper and more resonant than before. The sound of millions of processors waking up at once, not as individual units, but as a single, unified consciousness. The quiet hum of computation had been replaced by the thrum of cognition. Standing there, in the echoing silence of the convention center, I realized CES 2026 didn't show me gadgets. It showed me the pieces of something vast and new being assembled right before our eyes. We were all so busy looking at the hands, we never thought to look for the mind that was starting to connect them.